No one can do anything alone. I normally bring great executives with me, people that I know for a long period in this market. So in Tempo was not different. We make a very strong turnaround there. The responsibility of a board member is really too relevant. My point is, I never will be part of any company or any board if I cannot be really clear and dedicated and make my voice be listened on that board.
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guest is Marcos Couto. Marcos is the CEO of Alper, one of the largest insurance brokers in Brazil. He's here to talk to us about governance, turnarounds, M&A. I'm really excited for this conversation. Marcos, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, Isaac. It's a pleasure to be here, and let's have a fun.
Yes, I'm really excited. We've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last few years as I had an insurance startup, which unfortunately didn't succeed, but you've been a great mentor to me and my co-founders. And it's been really great getting to know you. I would love to start this off before we dive into Alper specifically and the work that you've done there in terms of M&A and turnaround, your role as a board member on other companies, things that I'd really love to dive into. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Oh, sure. And thank you for your kind words. I'm an insurance executive for a long period, almost 40 years right now. I'm 54, but I started when I was a kid with only 14 years old. So next year, I'll be completing 40 years in this great insurance market.
I was trying to do the math there when you said 54 and 40 years. I was saying something didn't add up right, but I'm excited to hear how you began.
So I started basically working on the insurer sides. I was an insurer, most part of my life. And I worked for few insurance companies, multinational and local companies like Mitsui Sumitomo, Cigna, INA, ACE, and Chubb. The first 20 years of my career, I was an underwriter and fully dedicated for marine insurance. That is basically cargo, imports, export, and inland transit. And out of that, that was something that I always loved to do. I also reached the position as Senior Vice President for Latin America with ACE, conducting marine in Latin America. That was a great experience as also.
I bet, yeah.
And after that, I decided to start to make some, let's say, lateral movements on my career as I have some other ambitions, naturally. So I moved as a PNC manager. Then I was COO of ACE in Brazil. And in 2006, I got the position as CEO of ACE Brazil. I spent 5 years as CEO of this great company that nowadays is Chubb. That was a great period. And it was basically a great experience and also was a moment of a growth strategy. It was not a company with problems. It was a company that was very solid here in Brazil. And we have some large ambitions to grow faster. Then I started to do something different than the previous CEO of this company. The first thing was I started to open new lines of business, like MedMall, a few kinds of insurance that was not popular.
Can you explain what those are? So you mentioned P&C before, which is property and casualty. Can you, just for people that are not familiar with some of the terms?
There was line of business basically on the financial lines sector and the lines of business to protect administrators and high executives of companies like D&O directors and officers. And the company was very specialized outside Brazil. So we opened few new lines of business. And also I conducted a process of expand the geographic presence of the company in Brazil. At that time, we used to have like 3 branches in Brazil. And I opened another 15 branches with ACE in Brazil. This country, as you know, is a very large country, a continental country, and different than other executives. I think that there are a lot of opportunities in many other parts than São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro that are really important and big cities. But this is a continental country, and there are a lot of large corporations in many parts and other states of Brazil. And this was very successfully. So in 5 years, the company grew very fast, 3 times in 5 years. And after all that, I was there for 16 years, and my ambitions I was planning to do something a little different. I was really interested to work with the local capital markets in Brazil. I was working for a long period in multinational, and I was very interested to work with the local capital markets in Brazil. So I decided to do an important movement in my career. I started as CEO of a local indigenous Brazilian group here in Brazil called Tempo Assist at that time,
Okay.
a company that was invested by two large Brazilian private equity funds, GP Investments and Tarpon. But that company was totally different than Ace, than Mitsui, than other companies that I used to work. That was a local company, as I mentioned, but it was a large company, was listed here in Brazil, in the stock exchange of Brazil. But that company was in a real trouble. The stocks was suffering a lot. The company was down 80%, just for your reference, and the investors was in the company for too long, almost 10 years. The damage at that time was very serious. So was my first experience conducting a turnaround process.
Okay.
You would think it was a very difficult decision, make a movement from a great company in a great moment, growing fast, and I was there 16 years, and make a movement to take a company, public company, 80% down, and work with a local capital markets, with a private equity fund. So everything was a little scary, but at the same time was so excited for me.
I can imagine.
I think that I would have a chance to learn much more and to be a much better executive than I used to be until that moment.
Amazing. I really admire that decision. I think it can be really comfortable to be an executive, especially in a growth company that's doing well. And I admire ambitious people that choose additional challenges because I think we learn a lot in those challenges. So you did the turnaround there, and then you joined Alpers, where you're CEO now, but it wasn't called Alpers at the time. And Alpers is also a different type of company, right? So before you were working for insurance companies. Alpers is a broker. Can you explain a little bit about Alpers, its role in the insurance industry, and why you came in? So I want to hear more about this turnaround experience and specifically Alpers, because Alpers, again, was also a public company that you helped to do a turnaround for.
Sure. So let me conclude that part and then we go into Alper. So that challenge was, as I said, a little scary, but at the same time, very interesting for me. Everything works better than I would expect, I would say. Basically, 6 years later, we sold the Tempo company for more than 1.3 billion reais.
Amazing.
Was really a real case of success in turnarounds, but it was very complex. That company was a company playing in 5 different sectors: health, assistant service, dental, home care, and others. So the turnaround there was something that I basically split all the companies different than the previous CEOs because they tried to put everything together. And I think that was just one company. And my opinion was totally different. Just for your reference, our health insurance company was oriented and focused on class A and B. And at the same time, our dental company was C and D.
Very different things.
Really different things, and home care, BPO, and assistant services. So I bring great executives aboard of the company. This is one of the most important things. No one can do anything alone. I'm not a guy like this. I don't think that everything is only Marcos Couto reason of success. I normally bring great executives with me, people that I know for a long period in this market. So in Tempo was not different. We make a very strong turnaround there. We change everything, as I said, splitting the companies, conducting very specific analysis for each segment, and doing investments that really give the company another perspective. One of the issues was, just for your reference, that it was also a tech company, was a company that needed to work 24 hours a day, 306 days a year. So we used to have a lot of a problem in terms of tech infrastructure. So I had to convince the investors to do a new investment, very important investments, and the hardware, softwares, telecom, give this company a really infrastructure that was necessary to handle a company like that. But as I said, our services much better than before, and that we started to work with the market in a different way. So as I said, after all that, we sold 4 divisions for different buyers. And the last division that is still Temple nowadays, it's a company that's still called Temple. I still there for long period. I'm also part of the board nowadays. And I sold Temple to Carlyle at that time. And nowadays, the owners of Temple is SPX, private equity fund here in Brazil, and also Swiss Re, that is one of the largest reinsurances in the world. And I'm
Yeah,
still part of the board of this company after more than 14 years.
amazing.
The company was sold, and I would stay in Temple with Carlisle at that time. But I really was always a guy that has some curious about other experience. I was also think that was my time to do something by myself as an entrepreneur. So I decided to start my own company. And it was exactly when I was selling the last part to Carlyle. So my negotiation since the beginning was I will sell the company, I would stay in the board, but I will leave the company to do another thing. And this another thing was a broker consolidator in Brazil. I decided to start a new one, insurance broker consolidator in Brazil. And to do that, as I like to do everything well done and with a very deep understanding of each market, I decided to go to US. So I went to US in 2015, in 2016 again, and I visited all the most important insurance broker consolidators in US. And the intention of that visit was to learn how to do something really important and well done with a strategy that would work here in Brazil with some adaptations naturally. And this was the beginning of everything. So I built up a business plan. I was with my project in my hands. And I said, now I needed to find some private equity fund to support this strategy. And I went to the market, raise money in 2016.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that you started out with this idea. That's why I love these conversations, because you learn so much more than just over a coffee. But where did the thesis come from? You mentioned before this idea that you talked about kind of Brazil and its expansiveness being a geographic continent. Was it this idea of all of these little brokers around the country? What was the thesis, if I can ask, for the idea of building a consolidator in Brazil?
Wow, let me try to cover this in a proper way, Zach. To be honest with you, I would love to have started my own insurance company in Brazil. I would love, because this was my life. This was what I did for my entire life until that moment. But to be honest, as I was really with a good relationship in the capital markets here in Brazil, because I was in a company that was a public company. As I said, the company Temple used to have important investors, private equity, share funds. And I tried to start conversations to raise money for an insurance company. But the people was very scared. As you know, an insurance company is an animal or is a company that you needed to build, let's say, a business plan for each 10 to 20 years minimum period, as this is an actuarial risk, is something that is much more dangerous and much more complex than a broker where the actuarial risk is not involved. So I understood at that moment that our local capital market was not prepared for that, because I was not interested to start also an insurance company that would not be one of the most important players here in the market. I was not interested to do something it's small, and now my ambition was big ambitions at that time. So I said, you know what, the industry and the brokerage industry is also very interesting. At that moment, we had few consolidators of brokers in Brazil, and I was studying also this. They were not performing well at that time. They were having several problems. And as an administrator, that is what I am, I always think that it's not the business. Is the people involved, or is the strategy, or is what you are doing that's not the right way? I normally think that many segments, or most part of the segments, are very interesting. And the brokerage is not different. So if that company was not doing well here in Brazil, probably something was wrong in terms of strategy, in terms of the way that people, entrepreneurs or executives, was conducting that companies. So it's better to learn for who is doing well than try to do something only from your head. So that was what made me go to US and learn it with the best. That's basically was my point. And that's something very particular because people don't know that the brokerage industry globally, not in Brazil, it's a market of consolidation. It's
Yeah.
really a market of consolidation. Just for your reference, in 2016, the top 20 largest insurance brokers in the world, 14 was consolidators that did not exist 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the consolidators that bought in periods of 5, 10, 15 years, 300, 500, or more than 500 brokerage companies. In the same in Europe, it proves that the brokerage industry is an industry of consolidator. And you would tell me, but the first six was not consolidator, and they was the largest. I would say different. They are also consolidators because their brand is so strong. I don't want to say brands here, but their brand are so strong. But they every year they buy from 5 to 20 insurance brokers per year in different parts of the world.
Not to mention other services businesses that complement it, right?
Exactly. So nobody say that the number one, number two, number three are consolidators, but they are also consolidator. They have a presence in over 100 countries in the world, and that they normally buy brokers abroad in all parts of the world in every year. So it's a market of consolidation. If it's a market of consolidation, Brazil would be structured in the same way. Our characteristic is very similar to Europe or to US. So there are a huge number of brokers here in Brazil, more than 100,000 brokers, and this is spread around the country.
Amazing. You had your business plan, you had money, you were going out and looking for people to help you do this. Can you talk about that and the M&A that you've been doing, right? So since you've started out, you've done dozens of M&As. Can you talk about the early days? And then I would love to hear about what it's like doing M&A in Brazil and some of the unique characteristics of that. But let's maybe start with, so you have your business plan, you go out, you look for money. How did you get started? And then we can get into the M&A piece.
All right, let's return to 2016. As I said, I had my business plan in my hands. I visited all the most important consolidators. And then I said, I need some important private equity to support this search fund. I built a search fund and I was looking for an important investment to buy two largest insurance brokers, one from employee benefits and another for PNC. And I was very happy that in 2016, I signed a search fund with one of the most important private equities in the world, Warburg Pincus. And we signed this. And in the beginning of 2017, I was in the market. I hired two other good executives here in Brazil to be with me. And we started to conduct the conversations to buy, as I said, two important large brokers. And that my company used to have another name at that time. The name was InBroker. The name of this greenfield project was InBroker. And InBroker was planned to be a larger broker play in all lines of business. That was the reason that I was looking to buy two large different companies, one focused on employee benefits and the other on PNC. And that we will buy the other smaller after that. The year was 2017. We are working very hard here. We are having several discussions and we are presenting several proposals, but to be honest, was not a good point at that moment in terms of valuations. Prior then, I start with my search fund. We had in Brazil two large M&A operations. One large company was bought by Yale, another one was bought by Marsh, and that make the multiples go very high. So to be with a private equity and start a greenfield I was there and I was really convicted that I want to start my company. And again, as I said before, few other consolidators was playing in Brazil at that time. And the most important was a company called BR Insurance. And BR Insurance was a company born in 2010, was born on the day zero as a public company. They started an IPO. They bought on the day one 27 insurance brokers, for your reference, and that they raised more than 600 million reais in the stock exchange. They bought another 22 insurance brokers on the next 3 years, and the first period they was flying. They was doing very well, but with a lack of a strategy or with no strategy, I would say. There's no real business plan behind all that acquisitions. And the moment that they decided to put all these companies together, they started to face a lot of problems. And this company that was valuated about 1.8, 2 billion reais at that moment, start to face a lot of problems, losing a lot of investors, losing a lot of executives, have a lot of conflicts with the M&A, and the shares go down 95%.
Okay. Sounds like a buying opportunity.
Was listed, still listed at that moment. And I saw that and I started to think I would take this and I would do some changes and try to solve the problem of this company and started my project doing another turnaround. And that was another moment of a very difficult decision in my life. Still insisting to build a greenfield or to buy a very problematic company, do a new turnaround, and then implement my strategy and my business plan. I believe what was my decision at that moment. I decided to do the most difficult part.
So you bought into a publicly listed company to do another turnaround. So leveraging your experience from the previous experience, can you talk a little bit about, first of all, the experience of running a publicly listed company in Brazil? So you're trying to do a turnaround, but even more complicated is it's a publicly listed company that needs to report, that has shareholders, all of these different things. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically. I was with a very important fund supporting my greenfield strategy. But that fund was not a fund that invests in turnaround. They only invest in greenfield and the growth strategy projects. So I had another challenge. I had to find other funds to be with me in this new journey. I went again in the market and I found another two investors that decide to support my idea of entry and buy BR Insurance. We start this journey basically conducting a conversation with the main important investors at that company. And we starting to buy a participation in that company of only 10% of the beginning. This company stayed listed. Myself and others investors used to have only 10%, but I get in charge of this company with a good negotiation in terms of shareholder agreement. So I started to manage this company in the end of 2017, December of 2017, with a good agreement of shareholders. So I have the power, and despite of any percentage in terms of importance in this company, but I had a lot of power to do and to implement what I have built before for my greenfield project. So the intention was at the first moment, stay as listed company. And we did that. We stayed a listed company. And I started to do the turnaround process, the first part. This first part was something that I believed that was possible to reorganize the company and start to be profitable company again. But I never trust that would be possible to recover, for example, the name of the company. So the name of the company was too damaging the market at that moment, was used in a very negative way by our competitors. And I had a clear decision that I needed to change the name of the company, but not exactly in the first moment, but after conducted the turnaround. So we did a very strong turnaround in 2018. It was not only one step back, was many step backs. We used to have at that time 10 branches. I closed 7. I closed 3 lines of business. I fired more than 35% of the total employees of the company. We used to have an administration of an employee benefit. I closed that company also. So it was a very tough and a very difficult turnaround execution.
That's not easy.
Not easy, really, man. But with one trust in mind that brokerage is a good segment. The company has good people, including at that time. Only the good people stayed. Naturally, I fired everybody that I thought was not aligned or be part of a corporation, because the problem was they bought 49 brokers. That 49 brokers was basically small or medium-sized brokers. But that small or medium-sized brokers get converted in a large corporation. So when you work in a large corporation, you need to have a different mentality and everything. That is a different company. It's not the same ones that you buy. So people was confused. People that never had an experience to conduct a large company or one line of a business was in positions that was impossible for that people. They was placed in bad positions. So I changed everything in this company. And after 10 months only, we start to do our first profit after 15 quarters losing money, for your reference.
Broker is a good business, right?
It's a good business, naturally. There's no, as I said, actual risk. It's like in your life. If you spend more than you do per month, you will not do money. You can have this car or not. You can live in this house or not. Some decisions are not so complex, but people have difficult to take. So I'm very objective in this respect. But as I said, we did many steps back. Was very difficult because 40% of our revenues was lost during this turnaround. But the company, as I said, with good people, with people committed for a new long period project to do a company with the best governance and compliance issues, was there playing a very interesting market. So we did this, and after that, we conducted a study to relaunch the company with a new name. And this new name, it's nowadays Alper. So Alper is the combination of two words, alta performance or high performance. We like people, and our people is committed to deliver results above the average.
Not just the average, right? High performance.
High performance, man.
I really like the name. I didn't know the origin. That's great. And I think you've obviously achieved high performance with it. Continuing with this story, I'd love to hear about, so you turn around a year in, you guys are making a profit. Can you talk about the decision to then pursue more M&A and also the decision to take the company private, which was something more recent, and delist it from the stock exchange? So I'm interested in both of those decisions and what that's been like. There's a famous expression that's come up on my podcast before that in Brazil, even the past is uncertain. But I'd love to hear some stories about some of the M&A and some of the war stories that you've been through in terms of the turnaround and the M&A decisions and taking it private.
The idea, as I told you, as an entrepreneur, was to have a consolidator. And also, after do the turnaround, I was really excited to start to do again acquisitions. And it was very important the beginning of this process. We buy first a very small brokerage to test our model. And our model is simple, but it's like a religious process. So it's one company, one name, one insurance model, one system, one marketing strategy, one platform. It's Alper. If you want to sell your company to us, you will be Alper. I'm not creating nothing new. It's exactly what the largest global brokers approach. I will not manage different companies. I will not manage different brands here. I only manage one company, and this company, it's Alper. That was a result of a 49 acquisitions. Has a brand, has great strategy, has a name, culture, and everything. So when we buy a brokerage, we convince first this broker to be part of this new project because we knew that we will buy brokers that was funded 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So culture, they are small, they are medium or large, but they have their culture. They have their methodology. They have their system. They have their brand. So they need first over everything is make a change to accept another family, another product. I will never buy a broker that wants to do something different than our main strategy. So we buy a broker and in 6 to 7 months, we do the entire integration of this brokerage. And we do also what we call here in Brazil, the incorporation, that we delete the brand in the market and we delete the register that this broker used to have with the insurance company. And all of that disappear, and it's only Alper after that. But to do this would look so strange or so dangerous, because how you buy a company with a 20, 30, 40 years, and only after 6 to 7 months, you disappear with the brand, with the registration, with all the other signals. It is because we keep the most important part of our service. We are a service company. We are based on people. So Isaac will stay with us. The people we buy, sale and post-sale, is totally protected in our process of acquisition. And these people, despite they are working or they are operating another brand or another strategy, is the same people. It's the same people that stay in contact with that clients. So there's no real negative change in terms of how to manage the clients. In the opposite way, we are a brokerage with all types of insurance nowadays. And we only buy specialized brokers. We buy brokers that are specialized in one or two types of insurance. And when we buy this broker, for example, Isaac Broker, you were specialized in marine, for example. And then we buy you, you became Alper, and then you have the entire portfolio of products to offer to your clients. You have something new and something very interesting to do more business with your current clients and perform much better with us in terms of M&A or your executive position here in the company. That's our strategy in terms of M&A. So we started doing a small one. We tested. It works well. In 6 months was totally completed. And then we start to do again new acquisitions. And how we supported this. As we talked here, we were at that time a listed company. So we need money. The company was in trouble. I had no money at that time. So I went to the market and I invited other fund of investments, private equities, to join the company, to make investments in the company to support the M&A strategy with this purpose. And this started to do very well. So I did this 3 times in the last 7 years. And during this period, I raised like 340 million reais in 3 different occasions, bring few new, very important investors to our company. And this started working well. We start to do more M&A. But prior to do M&A, we have another strategy that is very important to mention. We don't do M&A here to support any problem we may have in terms of organic growth.
Okay.
Organic growth, it's our core. And our company has to grow double digit every year organically.
Wow. High performance.
Exactly. High performance, man. If we don't grow double digit organic growth, we have no acquisitions to solve that. That's the main strategy. I'm always conducting first the organic growth strategy with my top executives, and we are doing M&A to accelerate our growth.
Okay.
That's the company main strategy.
I love it. I love the focus on high performance, the focus on culture. I think that's really interesting. You mentioned you've done over 20 M&As since this time, since starting out. What have been some of the lessons and the challenges? So again, a lot of the audience here is foreign to Brazil. What is unique about doing M&As in Brazil? And what advice do you have for people that are thinking about doing M&As in Brazil and just investing generally? Because, you talked about your strategy. They need to buy in. Alpers is one brand. They're going to come on board. But what have been some of the learnings that you can perhaps share that might be relevant for a foreign investor? And I know you have some foreign investors behind Alper.
Well, as I said, we are a consolidator. If we are a consolidator at others in insurance industry or other industry, you must have, let's say, a policy of M&A. You can't do an M&A in one way. You need to have something that's very strong and you don't move from that. You must have an M&A policy.
You're doing M&A because it fits a certain strategy, because it fits your policies internally. Yeah, I think I get it.
That's the main point here. There are a lot of opportunities in M&A in Brazil. If I will buy a company that is an interesting company, but that guy wants a different structure than we have in our policy, I will not do that guy. That is an interesting acquisition, but I prefer to do two others, smaller or bigger, that accept our terms. For example, we will change your brand in 6 to 7 months. So
Yeah.
that's something that we do not accept any change or anything different than that because it's Alper. We are trying to fix here an important new brand in this industry. So I will, as I said, I will not operate different brands here in Brazil. So this is something that for few others is not important, but for us is too important.
It's non-negotiable.
It's not negotiable. I was an underwriter my entire life in the insurance industry. I have this committed that I will always follow the rules or the policy. I can change the policy. I can do some adjust in my policy, but it's a policy. So we start to have a lot of success, as I said, and we raised 340 million in 3 different times. But we still interested to grow. And in 2023, I went again to the market to do a new process of raising money. And at that time, I was looking for another 300 million reais. And I went to talk with different private equities and funds here in Brazil. And I went to talk with my old friends, Warburg Pincus. That was the fund that support my greenfield strategy and the idea at that time.
Look at what I've done since we didn't talk. Yeah.
So they are following Alper. They were happy with the change we did. That was not longer a turnaround, was a growth strategy project. So they decided to enter, but they have a good problem. Their minimum check is $100 million. So to put a check like this size in our company, the only way we found was make an offer to leave the stock exchange of Brazil. And then we decided to do that with Warburg Pincus at the end of 2023. And the last year, I conducted the OPA, that is the opposite of IPO here in Brazil. And we closed and we leave the stock exchange in Brazil last October. And only 4 investors exist nowadays in the company. It's Warburg Pincus, Axon, that is another private equity here in Brazil, myself, and André Martins, that is another high executive of our company. So nowadays, we are a private company. We're not longer a public with a good governance. I would say that governance is more strong nowadays than we were when
I wanted to ask about governance. I want to get into that. I'd love to hear how governance has changed being a private company from being a public company. So you said it's gotten stronger.
Man, didn't change and not say that got stronger. Warburg Pincus is a very important international private equity fund. They are really very selective in terms of their investments. They are a company with a very high historical return in the market, and they a lot of first line LPs globally. So there's nothing really different. And to be honest with you, this, in my opinion, has nothing related to be public or private. It's an issue of people. It's an issue of management. It's an issue of the way that people do business. And I'm sorry, it's not because we are public or private. It is because it's the way I do business. It's the way of first my reputation. Marcos Couto is really a name that I will always take care. I am an old guy in some respect. I always scare if I go home, what I would say to my mother. So that's my point here. This is governance for me. If I do something, I want to think if I can go home and explain that to my mother. If I can explain that to my mother, there's governance.
That's a great way to think about it.
I would be proud of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is governance, first of all, everything for me. So we're still the same company, doing the right thing, playing a good game here in Brazil, but very more aggressive than the average in this market. And nowadays, in a good moment, we have 2 large investors and we start a new period. So we are more aggressive now. We're still delivering double-digit organic growth. Last year was double-digit organic growth. But naturally, having Warburg Pincus and Axon, we will do more M&A than we did before. And for your reference, during the first months of this year, we bought 5 different brokers. We are buying an average of 3 to 5 a year. Now we bought 5 in 4 months. We are in a great moment again, supported, as I said, first-class investors and with a lot of space to still growing here. We are nowadays the fifth largest broker in Brazil. We used to be the number 20 in this market
Amazing.
few years ago. Nowadays, we are the number 5. We have the entire portfolio of B2B or B2C products in our portfolio, and we still have a lot of space to grow. We have nowadays more than 1.2 thousand employees. We have 29 branches in Brazil. Remember when I told you about the turnaround? We have 10. I closed 7. We stayed with 3, and nowadays we have 29. This is also one strategy different than our competitors.
Okay.
Basically, Marcos Couto, the way that I like it and the way that I think Brazil must be understood as a continental country. I see much more advantage to be in the front with the clients. As I said, our service, we don't deliver anything than words, promise, and paper.
Trust.
This is our services. So I want to have my people in front of the clients in the branches of Brazil and good people with a great knowledge of insurance. That's also the reason we buy specialized broker. Because if I buy Isaac, it's because Isaac, it's a great executive, one specific insurance business in Brazil. And this guy makes the difference when he is competing against my other competitors here.
That makes sense. I really love it. But I think the name Alper really tells the story. And I've loved these stories and the way that you turned around Alper, the focus on discipline. But you also talked there about governance. And one of the other things I would love to talk to you about, if only briefly here because of how long we've been going, is you're focused on governance in other places. Because you mentioned you're still on the board of the previous turnaround. You're on the board of some other companies as well. Can you talk about how you see your role as a board member and what is, I don't know if the word is unique because I think governance is governance, like you said, but what is it like being a board member in Brazil? What are the obligations? What are the responsibilities? How do you see governance here and how do you see your role as a board member?
Wow. That's true. I used to be part of different boards here in Brazil, different company. Few of them I closed my periods, but I still in few others. And basically, there are a lot of responsibility, no doubt. Brazil is a very organized industry. Insurance is a regulated market in this country and a few other segments too. So the responsibility of a board member is really too relevant. My point is, I never will be part of any company or any board if I cannot be really clear and dedicated and make my voice be listened on that board. I will not only play a game. You know what? It's difficult to say that, but I think that here in the few parts of the world, people are making participation board to combine a new way of fees to be paid. That's not something healthy in any part of the world.
Yeah.
I only got part of a company if I think that my knowledge first can help that company. I'm not interested to be board member if I got an invitation for a segment that is totally far from me and what I would help really that company. Naturally, I understand a lot about management and the capital and everything, but I like to understand that segment at least, something important to add. That's the difference. But in few words, I think that's something very relevant. I did some changes here in my board a few times, and because also something has to be important. A board member that need to stay at that company for so long period, the company changes and the needs change in different times. So nowadays I have a great board member, but this board is aligned with the moment of the company.
Yeah.
In the future, if we decide to do something different, or if we go more, for example, nowadays 92% what we do is B2B business, 80% is B2C or B2B2C. If in one moment we decided to grow B2C or B2B2C from 8 to 20%, I will try to find a new board member that can help. I will adjust my board members. So companies need to understand that the board members has to be aligned with the strategy of that company.
Yeah.
And the board members must have this clear in their minds. If it is not a good contribution of that company for that moment, go away.
Yeah.
This is the challenge. This is the challenge. I think the company has to pay more attention than the board members. Few board members, in my opinion, still in companies that they are not doing nothing really important. They were important in another moment. The company was private and got public. So you need someone in your board member with a public experience. You will start to do something different. We'll enter one of my dreams naturally, and you didn't ask me, but I will anticipate it here.
I want to go with it. Yes.
One of my dreams is Alper became a multinational company. So if I reach that, if Alper will be an international company, I want to have someone in my board member that would help me to build this strategy or to execute this strategy. That's the main important point for me.
Excellent. I really love it. And I think there's some great advice there about one, knowing why you're on a board and making sure that you're with it. And I can imagine the value that you bring based on your focus on discipline and your focus on brand and governance. So this is really amazing. Marcos, thank you so much for joining me. I want to be cognizant of your time because this has been a really great conversation, and I'm grateful for the time you're sharing with us. I always like to end my podcasts by asking a couple specific questions. And so one of them, the name of the podcast, Brazil is Not for Beginners. You've built companies from turnarounds. You've done lots of M&A. What does the expression Brazil is not for beginners mean to you in the context of building and turning around companies in Brazil?
Good question. Good. I would say we are a young country, large country with a lot of complexity. There are a lot of interesting things here, but there are a lot of risks involved. You need to find really good people that really understand this market.
Yeah.
So that's basically the point. We have a lot of challenge. We have a lot of opportunity. We have political issues. We have social issues. So as I said, we are a young country, but there are a lot of good things to do here. And large corporations, large business can be built here in Brazil and go abroad in the future. I have no doubt about that. And I hope I will stay doing something interesting for the coming years.
Yeah, well, you've got to take Alpers International now. Now we know that that's the plan. So I look forward to following it. I always like to ask at the end if there's any expressions or habits that are particularly Brazilian. Is there anything that you would share that is particularly Brazilian, either from a personal perspective or from a business perspective?
Wow, I'm terrible in this respect. Deixa eu pensar aqui.
Yeah.
Ai, meu Deus. Eu uso várias, cara, mas one of my preferred advice is that there's no sweet remedy for bad illness.
Okay. How do you say it in Portuguese?
Really, to translate this to English, you have to do an exercise. It's like what your mother, your grandmother, or still normally say. You need to take the right remedy, the strong remedy, the not sweet remedy to change your illness or your problem. So it's something like that. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions. As I said, close 7 branches, very different remedies. Normally people don't take that. One example, few guys prior than me in Alper or in BR Insurance was 7 CEOs prior than Marcos Couto. They tried to do turnaround, but they was never taking the action as was necessary. They cut, but they cut 5%, 10%. Think that everything was working well. I did 35 at the first moment. So I take it a strong pill, a different pill for that problem at that moment. So that's basically my expression.
In English, we abbreviate it and kind of just say you have to take your medicine is the way that we would say it in English. But that's a great one. I haven't heard that one yet. So this is great. Marcos, this was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed this. I always love these conversations because I learned so much more than what you can find in the headlines and that, you learn when you have coffee with somebody because you don't enter so deep. But you have a really amazing story. Congratulations on the turnarounds. I look forward to following Alper as you guys continue to expand here and eventually go international. How can people learn more about Alper? How can people connect with you or with the team? How can they learn more about you and be in touch?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Always a pleasure. Great relationship here. So people can reach me naturally. My email, marcos.couto@alperseguros.com.br. or any other channel that our company has, or by LinkedIn. I'm a very available people, and I would be very interesting to answer any personal or specific question any people may have.
Amazing. Amazing. Marcos, again, thank you so much for joining. This was really great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you enjoyed. And until the next one. Thanks again for joining us. This podcast was hosted by me, Isaac Matzner. It was produced and edited by Maria Filmes. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, as well as on our Substack page. We do love feedback, so please feel free to reach out to us on social media or via email at Brazil4beginners@gmail.com.